What's going on, lacrosse fans? Welcome to the PLL Flash on the Lacrosse Flash Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Hulsebos, joined by Flash Editor and Chief Austin Owens, as we are back with the PLL Flash after a couple of weeks off, and we're going to take a look back at Week 4 in the PLL from Long Island. And the storylines from the weekend, they're quite interesting. The Archers, who were undefeated going into Friday night, they dropped both games on their weekend doubleheader, both in one-goal contests on Friday night against the Chrome and then on Sunday afternoon against the Whipsnakes. We also saw the Redwoods bounce back against the Water Dogs in a shootout in what looked like tropical storm-like conditions. The Chaos got their second win of the season after that in a game where we saw Paul Rabel score a hat trick en route to 6 points, which puts him back in the lead on the all-time points scored record in professional field lacrosse. And the Atlas, led by their young core, continue to look really good over their last 4 games. And we're going to be talking about all of that and more. Austin, glad to have you with me. Excited to talk some lacrosse. You're from up north, north of the border. But how was your 4th of July weekend?
You know, it wasn't so bad. Obviously, we have Canada Day on the 1st, and it was a little weird. Not a little weird, I should say. Not a lot of people celebrated Canada Day because of the unmarked graves and the situation that we had talked about in a previous Lacrosse Flash. A lot of people took it. It was a divisive thing, and I'm taking a lot of time to say this, but some people celebrated Canada Day, which is fine. Other people sort of took the time to reflect and, figure out what we can do better as a country. That's what I was doing. And so in that sense, it was good. 4th of July is kind of quiet for us. It's just kind of another day, but not as many fireworks as Canada Day, but I'm sure you guys had a good time. And, the PLL, you better be comfortable being uncomfortable because they are full of surprises this season.
Full of surprises. It's very, very excited to dive into these games. As you just said, stuff happened this weekend that we did not expect coming into the weekend. That ends up, happening in the PLL, just what we saw this weekend. For example, it was hard to imagine on Friday afternoon going into the Archers' first game that the Archers, who looked so good over their first 3 weeks, that they would lose both of their games this weekend and come out of week 4 at 3-2. The Cannons, who we all picked in our Flash staff picks going into the weekend, they watched their lead evaporate as the Chaos stormed back in that second half with 9 goals, also led by Blaze Reardon. He finished with 18 saves. We saw goalies pulled for various different reasons, which we will get to in a moment. But something that we did foresee possibly happening going into the weekend was Paul Rabel tallying 3 points to pass John Grant Jr., as the all-time points leader in professional field lacrosse history. Rabel ended up finishing the game with a team high of 6 points on a hat trick and 3 assists, finishing the game with 647 points and counting in his professional field career. I made sure there to be as specific as possible. Professional field lacrosse points record. But Austin, an incredible feat for Paul. He's been doing this for a long time, and if he keeps playing this good and is able to stay healthy, I'd imagine he plays for a little bit longer. He'd be able to add on to these numbers. But an incredible feat for an incredible career on what was just a vintage Rabel goal.
That one goal created the biggest shitstorm on lacrosse Twitter that I've seen this summer. So congrats to Paul Rabel for, Socialist Canada is what, I believe Dan said that. So didn't get a chance to address him on it, but, it is what it is. We'll take it. The goal itself was fantastic. Paul Rabel, there was no doubt that he was going to pass it this season. It was cool to see Junior come out last year in the MLL bubble and, surpass Paul's record. But it was equally cool to see him come back and do it again. And Junior's a legend in this game. Paul's a legend in this game. And, I think Paul said it perfectly on social is, the individual accolade's nice, but there's no player in this league that takes that over his team winning a game. So I think he's going to be a little upset that his team couldn't pull it out. But, it's something to be excited about. He broke it once, like I said before. So, yeah, I think the biggest thing to come out of it was the overblown situation on Twitter. I was kind of happy to be out of the house when that was going on and just sort of viewing it from afar. But congratulations to Paul Rabel. The semantics behind the pro lacrosse, and I won't get into any of that. And it's a story for another day and an argument for a completely other day on top of that. But yeah, congrats to Paul. Congrats to the Chaos for winning. Obviously, the Cannons would have liked to have come out on that. But yeah, it's an exciting accomplishment and an exciting thing to do. Not close to home. I think he would have probably liked to do it in Maryland last weekend, but it wasn't in the cards.
Absolutely. Paul now retaking that top spot on the all-time points scored list after, as you were saying, John Grant Jr. came out of retirement in 2019, passed Rabel on that list, but now as obviously the PLL-MLL merger, all those historical stats come together. And, I mean, you look at, John Grant Jr. now being the offensive coordinator at Johns Hopkins. I mean, he could come out of retirement again, but I would say
Junior to the chaos next year.
that's kind of a stretch. Yeah, I guess we could see. I mean, Chaos could need some help, even though
If he goes
they
in the
did get
player
a
pool, Towers is picking him up. It's over.
I would imagine if he does hit the player pool, we will see John Grant Jr. possibly fall somewhere, but we can't imagine that he'll come out of retirement again to play. We'll see. But Rabel, he should stay atop that list for a little while. Obviously, you see Rob Pannell, he got the 5th spot. He's currently tied for that 5th spot with Ryan Boyle. So Rob Pannell continues to move up that list. We haven't seen Joe Walters play this season, but he's currently 3rd on that list. And then down at the bottom there at 10 was Will Manny. He jumped into that top 10. But Rabel should stay atop this list. He'll be able to add to it through the remainder of this season and then into the near future. But Austin, as you said, the lacrosse world, mainly lacrosse Twitter, very vocal over the weekend as many of the outlets covering the game, including the PLL, obviously saying that Rabel, the all-time leader in points in pro lacrosse history, which at its core, as we're saying before, not entirely true. John Grant Jr. still holds that title thanks to 1,446 points in the NLL, but still an incredible feat for not just a great player, but a great ambassador for our game of lacrosse. And despite kind of hinting at retirement, we'll hope that he sticks around and plays for a little longer because he's putting together the best season over his past few. And if he really wants that top points scoring spot to stay, he's got a ways to go to get to 1,400 plus.
I will say I did a futures piece on the MVP candidates, and I said, screw it. We'll throw Paul Rabel in. We'll throw in, your Miles Jones, guys like that had really good odds. Those are I'm looking like a very smart man today, Ryan. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but that was just sort of a pluck it out of the list, and it's worked out for me. You roll the dice sometimes, and it goes your way.
I grabbed Kieran Mcardle as my MVP pick at the start of the season, which Kieran Mcardle had a big weekend this week. I believe 2 goals or 3 goals along with an assist, some kind of stat line like that. But absolutely, Rabel, I believe he's 3rd right now in points in the league. He's up among the league leaders as well in goals, so cementing himself as one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Definitely this season putting on a show. Founder, owner of the Premier Lacrosse League. We expect him to continue making a big impact on the game in ways that we can't imagine both on and off the field. But speaking of things that we expected, Rabel passing that milestone was one of them, or should I say didn't expect. I didn't expect this odd of a weekend for the goalies. As for the Archers, we saw Drew Adams start and play the entire game on Friday night against the Chrome. Chris Bates saying that it was a planned thing coming into the season that they'd have Gittleman start 2 games and then have Adams start 2 games and then make a decision, which based on what Coach Bates said and seeing what Gittleman started, on Sunday, it looks like Adam Gittleman will be the goalie for the Archers moving forward. But Dylan Ward and Tim Troutner were both replaced on Saturday, which the weather did not play to their benefit whatsoever. But Charlie Cipriano came in, replaced Ward. Jack Kelly replaced Troutner, which we will talk more about in a moment. But then on Sunday for the Chrome, Sean Scanoni gets the start. We're hearing that Galloway at first wasn't supposed to be available for the Sunday doubleheader. So the plan going into the weekend for the last couple weeks, I would assume, was to start Scanoni. Suden went on and honored that. So we saw reigning 2-time MLL goalie of the year, Sean Scanoni, make his first PLL start. And then in that game, Jack Concannon suffered what the league has said is a lower body injury. We were told he left in an ambulance during that game, and replacing him to start the 4th quarter and finish the game was JD Colarusso. So overall, weird weekend for the goalies. And I didn't even mention there in that first on-field scuffle in the Chaos and Cannons game, Nick Morocco had to serve a 5-minute non-releasable penalty. Jake Stover came into goal. So weird weekend for the goalies, Austin. But like I said, the weather, especially on Saturday, did not play to their advantage. And we saw Dylan Ward and Tim Troutner, unfortunately, struggle mightily and get pulled there at halftime.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Dylan Ward, I love him. A Canadian boy, big team guy. All the Flash stereotypes for him. Big team guy, Dylan Ward. I don't know what it is with him this season. It hasn't been going well for him. And the Water Dogs probably have one of the deeper, apart from maybe the Redwoods before Brian Phipps was claimed by the Whipsnakes, they probably have one of the deeper goalie pools. I think Charlie Cipriano is a good veteran. I think Matt DeLuca has a lot to prove in the league, atop of Dylan Ward, who's one of the best in the world when he's on his game. I don't know if it's the defensive play or just Ward not seeing the ball, not just getting bad luck with some of these shots. I don't know if he's registered double-digit saves in a game, which is unfortunate because he's one of the best in the world and he still is. Like, you can see it's there. Something's not going right for him or the Water Dogs. So, it is what it is there. Tim Troutner, I think it's sort of like the Archers situation, in my opinion. You have a goalie in Jack Kelly who was the backup for the World Championships in 2018. So he's a good goalie. He's a world-class goaltender. So there's always that sort of thing during the offseason we were talking about it where, if Troutner has an off game, we're going to see Kelly, we're going to see Fipper, we're going to see somebody come in and take over, and nobody's job is really secure as the starter on this team. And, Nat pulled the trigger on it. I'm really happy to see Jack Kelly. And one conversation we had with Nat before the first game of the season was, he stuck with Jack Kelly, and there was that interaction on Twitter where Jack went up and said, "Thank you for all you've done." And Nat told me he had to walk away from Jack Kelly or he was going to cry in front of his team on the first day of camp, and he didn't want that. So, he was very emotional post-game, Nat, and so was Jack. I think he was sort of holding back tears there as well. So that was a really nice moment for the Woods. Sucks for Tim Troutner a little bit, but, they got the win, and I'm sure Timmy will hope he gets back in their next game. But, the dub's the only thing that really matters to these guys. So it's a feel-good story to see Kelly in there, and, I hope Dylan bounces back because, oh, Canada, we like to see our own do well. So
absolutely,
I'm hoping the Water Dogs figure it out. But yeah, those two, I think we're just tip of the iceberg with it. The only thing I'll say about the other goaltenders, hopefully Kincannon's okay. The ambulance was sort of, not vague. That's not the right word for it, but just you can't really give a lot of information away if he's seriously injured. You want to make sure you get the right diagnosis. And Sean Scanoni, I mean, Thick Boy Summer's alive, man. That boy is a hell of a goaltender, and I think he just got the short end there with a really good Atlas offense. So, somebody has to lose, and that's just how it went on Sunday.
Absolutely. Atlas are real hot, and then obviously Sean Scanone kind of thrown in the fire there, but expected to get the start there. Great that we got to see him get in the game. But going back to Troutner and Ward through the first 5 games, as you said, he struggled pretty mightily. Very tough for the War Dogs as they sent a first-round pick in a package to the Chaos for Dylan Ward. Copeland banking on him being the guy in between the pipes for this season and for this foreseeable future, which we don't want to look too far into it. I'd imagine we see Ward this weekend as the Water Dogs have a very important doubleheader, so we should see him at least on that. We should see him, I would imagine, start one of the games. We could see something where we see another goalie come in. But Austin, you look at the Redwood situation, as you talked about it a little bit before. Jack Kelly getting into his first PLL game after a very long recovery following his knee injury at the World Lacrosse Championship in 2018. It seemed inevitable. But do you expect Kelly to now take the job, or do you think Troutner will be back in between the pipes Saturday night against the Whipsnakes?
I think it's one of those things where Nat's going to make us sweat on it a little bit and make us wait till the very last second. I don't think we'll know who their goaltender is until, Ryan Boyle and Burke announce it on the broadcast who's in the cage. So,
which is usually how it does go. Like, we didn't know Drew Adams was going to start on Friday. We didn't know Sean Scanoni was going to start on Sunday until it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting. It's one of those where, Tim Troutner's had a resume of production in this league, and he's been able to take the Redwoods, to the semifinals, into the finals in 2019. So do you go away after one half? Do you go away from the guy that's taken you there 2 straight years? Not single-handedly, obviously, but been the guy. The goalie is one of the most important positions in there. Or do you go with the hot hand and Jack Kelly? He it's not like he turned away, a crazy amount of shots, but he did enough to get them the win, and that's what's important. So, I think Nat's going to make us sweat on it, and that'll be very interesting to watch. I think both of them. I mean, with Phipps gone, I think your goalie tandem's locked in at this point. But it'll be very interesting to see. I think both of them are deserving. I think it'll probably be, whoever does well in practice before the game. I think that's who they're going to run with. It's one of those situations.
We'll see this weekend what each of these two teams do at the goalie position, especially the Redwoods, as I'd imagine for the War Dogs, they would use that restricted roster spot for the long weekend and carry all 3 of their goalies in Dylan Ward, Charlie Cipriano, and Matt DeLuca. So we'll see come probably the end of the week. But let's start going through these games. Let's start with Friday night's game, the Chrome and the Archers, as Chrome was able to pull out an 8-7 win on a Colin Heacock game-winning goal with a handful of seconds remaining. That was one of 4 goals for Heacock in the game on 7 shots. Big night for him. The Archers still, really good first quarter, 5-5, I believe it was, coming out of the first quarter, and then all of a sudden, the scoring just ended. Drew Adams obviously getting the start, made 12 saves, good for 63%, so not a bad outing from Adams. For Galloway, though, Galloway has continued to play really good. That's why at first it was very surprising to see Simoneau in on Sunday, because it's like Galloway's been playing great lacrosse. 13 saves, 68% save percentage for him in this game. What impressed you the most about Chrome coming out and getting a big win for the second straight week against, obviously last week against, at the time, undefeated Whipsnakes, now upsetting the undefeated Archers?
I think the better question is what didn't impress me about the Chrome, because there isn't much. Jackson Morrill's been a stud. I'll leave the Heacock on Peacock jokes alone, but Colin Heacock filled the net that game. The most impressive thing to me offensively for the Chrome was that only 4 players had points, and Justin Gutterding only had 1. So it was Morrill, Palasek, and Heacock were their 3 guys. And they only scored 8 goals, so it's not like you shouldn't expect 8 guys to have 8 points, or contribute on those 8 goals, I should say. But to only have 4 guys in on the action and to still put up that kind of an effort is very impressive. But after the game, Galloway, everybody you talk to, Sudan, everybody on the Chrome this is the defense. They brought us here. They got us to the end of that game, and they won it for us. Heacock won them the game, but the defense was the one that really took it home for them. And this weekend, I think, was the coming out party for Ryan Tarafenko. I think Ryan Boyle talked about it on the broadcast a little bit, as him sort of getting up to speed with the PLL game. And now that he knows what he should expect, he's just been a CTO monster. He's putting guys on islands. Like, he's up there right now as Zach Goodrich, for the best short stick defensive midfielder in the league, because he was just locking guys down. Tom Schreiber, he had like a good 25 or 30 second, possession where he stood out that much that he locked down the best midfielder in the world. Then you look at, Greg Whale. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, so I apologize to Greg. He was fantastic. He was sort of a guy that was touted as the guy that could shut down a Lyle Thompson and be that matchup guy. And he's done that so far, especially he's filled in for Jesse Bernhardt since he's been out the last little while. So I'm very interested to see how they go about, the future of this, because their defense looks fantastic. John Galloway's had 34 saves over the past 2 weeks, which is bananas. They have one of the best backups in the league in Simoneau. And they're missing Jordan Wolf and still putting up this kind of offensive production from a 4th-round pick and a guy they got from the player pool. Like, these are depth guys. These aren't guys that were picked up in the first round. They don't even have JT Giles Harris yet. Like, this team could be a wagon if they have to get through this patch of injuries, and I don't know how serious. Wolf looked like a hamstring. Bernhardt was a lower body, so that could always be something serious, and JT's a lower body. So who knows if these guys will be back or if they make the last stretch. But if this team recoups some of these guys that are good, like Tommy Palasek's been unbelievable. They're getting their offense again from a 4th-round pick, a guy they got in the player pool following the entry draft, and the guy they picked up off the player pool 2 weeks ago, mid-season. That's their offense, and they're winning, and they're close in games. So I don't want to say wagon yet, because that puts a lot of unrealistic expectations. And I think John Galloway, when I asked him a question during the presser, was we're not sort of focusing on anybody because it's too early in the season. That sort of, he's a coach at Jacksonville, so he's got the coach deep down. But yeah, they're not too high, not too low, and they're just getting through this little stretch where they have injuries. And I think they could become that wagon that we saw in the championship series last year if they just stay the course and keep doing what they're doing, because they're just putting their head down and competing.
Jordan Wolf, he's not on that injured reserve list. He is on the Chrome Active 25. Just has not suited up since week 1, since he did go down with that injury. But looking at the schedule, we have week 5 this weekend, then we have the All-Star weekend, and then a week off ahead of week 7. So an opportunity here over the next 2 or 3 so weeks to hopefully maybe get a Jordan Wolf back, maybe get a JT Giles Harris back again. We don't know the status of both of those players, but something that we can possibly look forward to. Shifting, though, to the Archers. And we'll talk about, I think, both games here for the Archers. One's the one against Chrome on Friday and against the Whipsnakes on Sunday, But the game against the Chrome on Friday, they played, it seemed like Archers lacrosse, took a ton of shots, had, ball moving everywhere. Same deal on Sunday, but the Archers were held to 29 shots on Sunday afternoon against the Whipsnakes. We were talking about odd weekend for the goalies. Kyle Bernlohr only made 4 saves in this game just because he didn't take that many shots on goal. So interesting to see that the Archers kind of in their most important game being limited there in terms of shots.
Yeah, it's tough to sort of look at that offense and believe that, you only got 4 saves for the Whipsnakes from Kyle Bernlohr, who's the goalie of the year candidate, and you still were able to pull that out on top of not having Matt Rambo. Like, we were blown away when we saw that stat that he only had 4 saves. Credit to the Whipsnakes, though. They were fantastic. This was probably, I don't want to say this is the toughest back-to-back because no team is an easy out in this league. But that was the toughest doubleheader I think I've seen a team have to go through this year. The Chrome are no slouches like we just talked about. Their defense, they scrap and they do what they need to do to win. So they are a pain in the ass to play against. And the Whips are the Whips, man. Like, I don't care who they're missing. Stagnita has them ready to go every single game. And Matt Rambo's a huge loss. But, they brought Zed Williams in and he was banging 2s from above the arc. Like I don't know what to say. We were talking about this before we started recording. I don't know what to say about the Whipsnakes because they're just boring's the wrong word for it, but they win so much that it takes the intrigue out of, unless they're losing, it takes the intrigue out of watching them because you're like, oh, yeah, hit singles, play defense. They're going to win by 10 probably. Like, it's just another day at the office, boys.
Even though it was a 1-goal win there for the Whipsnakes.
Yeah, no, they kept it close. Like, I can't even say that they blew them out, but I think you know what I'm getting at. It's just they win so often. It's just it's not even fun to watch them anymore because they're just so dominant. If that makes any sense to what I'm saying, I might just be babbling, but a long-winded way to get to the Archers is just I think they just put the pedal down and keep doing what they're doing because their defense is fine. I think Adam Gittleman, and I think he regressed sort of back to the mean of what we kind of expect from him, which is fine. He's still a world-class goalie as well. So it's not to say that he was crap or anything like that. He just, some days you're not going to come out and have, an 80 save percentage in a field lacrosse game. That's just not realistic to expect from your goalies.
Along with a goal, along with an assist.
The guy's like top 5 in the team in goals, I'm pretty sure right now. Like, it's just silly. Yeah, I think the Archers just need to keep trucking, honestly. It's a cliche and, it is what it is, but you played probably 2 of the top 3 or 4 teams in the league, even with Chrome with their injuries. Like I said, they're a pain in the ass to play against, and they're not a fun time for anybody. They're going to beat the crap out of you regardless of who's on their roster. So, I love watching Latrell Harris score, and we got to do the old Treasy bump. So there you go. It's in there. And the Whips are the Whips, man. I don't think it was more the Archers, losing. I think it was the other teams winning, if that makes sense as well.
Absolutely.
So I think they'll be okay. I think they're sort of building back up to this showdown with the Whipsnakes later in the season. I think it's the last game of the year. And I think barring injuries, you'll get to see, Matt Rambo will hopefully be back. You'll have the full rosters. That should be a championship preview, I would imagine. But anything can happen. It's like I said, nobody's an easy out. And quite literally anybody can beat anybody in this league. And the Archers found that out this week.
We're going to see on Sunday the Cannons and the Archers. The Cannons on the back end of their doubleheader this weekend. Cannons are 1-4, and they have a -3 goal differential. This weekend, their loss against the Chaos was their first by more than a goal. So, it's wide open. This weekend really kind of gave us the full any weekend, any game, it's wide open. Any team can win, especially we saw the Cannons with a big lead. Chaos came back. That's just kind of how it is. It's just parity, and it's just fun. I think it makes it more exciting.
Yeah, it's fun. Every team has 5 games now. So what I was saying before about Galloway, sort of everybody figuring themselves out. All-Star games next week after this coming weekend. It's 2 weekends from now. So there's not much more time to figure out everything. It's, you're expected to win now, and that's what you got to do. The Cannons, I'm going to double down on something I believe I said. It was either on here or GLE when I said the Cannons were the best 1 and 2 team in the league. The Cannons are the best 1 and 4 team in the league. They gave up a 9-1 run, which is gross. And the Chaos is one of those teams, again, like the Chrome. They might not win every game, but they are not fun to play against, and they will beat the crap out of you. I don't know. I don't know what Paul Rabel has some bad luck with these teams, man, because the Atlas the last 2 years, we thought they were contenders. They ended up finishing bottom of the league. The Cannons look like a wagon. They brought in Lyle. They brought in, all these guys. I'm drawing blanks on names, of course, because I'm just, Paul Rabel's got top 5 in the league in scoring. Like, he's fully back, and they just can't get that luck. They can't get those bounces. They can't get those wins. So I don't know. I don't know what he did, if he stepped under a ladder, if he broke a mirror, like what Paul Rabel did to deserve this kind of luck. But I don't think you can expect the Cannons to, only have one win on the season. They're going to find their win somewhere. And I think hopefully after the All-Star break, maybe clip this and save it for later. But I think they'll probably have a turnaround where they sort of find themselves a little bit and find their groove and, get back to what they were doing to start the year, which was, they're in it with every team they're playing against, minus this Chaos game was a bit of a runaway. But they've played the top teams in the league, and they've shown that they can run with them. So I'm not going to count them out just yet.
Absolutely, and they'll have the Water Dogs this Friday night out in Minnesota, so a very winnable game there with the Water Dogs. And then, as we're saying, the Archers on Sunday, a little bit more of a difficult one, but we will see how the Cannons fare. But back to the Whipsnakes, we saw Brad Smith step up real big in the absence of Matt Rambo. He scored 4 goals and an assist. Matt Abbott, a goal, an assist, 3 caused turnovers, and 6 ground balls. A pretty big stat line there for Matt Abbott, which Jordan Johnson, actually on Goal Line Extended last week, predicted that Matt Abbott would have a real big week. And then Joe Nardella at the face-off stripe doing his thing, 23 of 32, 72%, and 11 ground balls. So the Whipsnakes, getting a big win, continue, back on track after taking that loss last week into the Chrome. The Archers will look to get back on track this weekend against the Cannons after dropping both of their games to the Chrome and the Whipsnakes. Let's move on, though, to Saturday. The Redwoods defeated the Water Dogs 19-16. As I said before, like tsunami/tropical storm-like conditions. I'm up here. I'm in northern Jersey, so we had some of that weather move through, but I don't think we had really anything close to what we were watching on the screen. It was coming down hard. And for the goalies, as we were talking about before with Dylan Wood and Tim Troutner, unfortunate that it kind of played to their disadvantage here in this one. But very high-scoring game between the Redwoods and Water Dogs. We saw Sergio Perkovic tally 8 points on 2 goals, 2 2-point goals, and 2 assists. Ryder Garnsey had 4 goals. Jules Henningberg had a hat trick. Miles Jones, 4 assists. So a big game there from a couple guys there on the Redwoods. And then for the Water Dogs, too, Connor Kelly had 8 points on 4 goals, a 2-pointer, and 2 assists. Zach Courier, like Matt Abbott, a very wild stat line, 3 goals, 4 assists, a caused turnover, and 7 ground balls. But the Redwoods coming out on top in this one and adding goals there at the end there in the fourth quarter. You could see, obviously, towards the game, they added that one more. Good for their goal differential, just, looking at, farther into the rest of the season.
Yeah, goal differential means something in this league, and I think that's important to most fans. Is like, why are they running up the score? It's like, well, you have to. It's kind of like at international tournaments, like when you see somebody blow out somebody in, the World Cup or something like that. Goal differential matters in terms of the seeding. So when you see the Archers up plus 25, I know it's plus 24 now, I suppose, because they lost by 1 this weekend. No, it would be more because of the Chrome. Yeah, 23 because of the Chrome. Big math guy. It'll be interesting. The Redwoods, that empty netter matters in the long run. It's kind of weird that the Water Dogs, they were gassed at the end of that game, and you could kind of tell on the ride trying to get that ball back in their defensive zone that they double pulled Cav on the end line, and he just split them. And, that's part of Matt Cavanaugh just being unbelievably good at lacrosse, but it's also just guys trying to get the ball back, and they were running around for a good 30 seconds before that, and just the legs were gone. It is what it is. The Water Dogs, it's tough, man, because they look really good. I think this team's going to be very interesting to watch when they get Michael Sowers back, and hopefully he's back soon, because they just need that guy. Ben Reeves has been good, but I think he'd sort of work better in a tandem, like a 2-man game down low with Sowers, something like that. Mikey Schlosser's firing. Connor Kelly. There we go. I know words. He looks like a man that's, just got exposed in the NLL draft, and he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Yeah, that's not what it is, but, 8 points. He was on fire. So the Water Dogs were fine. I think they just ran into a Redwoods team that was hungry and needed a win. Jules is fantastic. Perk lit it up. Miles Jones, like you said, unbelievable. Rob Pannell, congratulations to him for moving up into the top 5.
A goal and 3 assists for Rob Pannell. I did not mention that before.
No, it's all good. Defense was fantastic again. TD Erlin did his thing. Like this team's good. It's kind of like the Cannons. Some teams are just kind of, it's not their day, and the Redwoods ran into a couple of those, unfortunately, but when they're going, they're one of the best in the league. I think when they run into those skids that they did over the last 2 weekends, then it's trouble. But you saw what they were this week against a Water Dogs team that, yes, is near the bottom of the league, but don't discount them because of that. They're a hell of a team.
TD had a great game there on Saturday. 24 of 33, good for 73%. That ties the lead. I think the top is 24 faceoffs won. I believe Trevor Baptiste has done it once. Joe Nardella has done it once. TD Erlin now becomes the third player to win 24 faceoffs. And that kind of lines us up for this weekend. As I said on Goal Line Extended last week, this is a big game for both of these teams because the War Dogs have their doubleheader this weekend against the Cannons and against the Chrome. And then the Redwoods have the Whip Snakes. So a very important game. We see the Redwoods come out on top. And then obviously sets us up, I should say, for a very good face-off battle between TD Erlin, and Joe Nardella this coming Saturday. So very excited for that. Let's continue here as we're going through these games. Let's go back to that Chaos and Cannons game. As you said before, in the second half, the Chaos go on a 9-1 run, and bringing up Paul Rabel's name again, he was the one to get that one goal there in the third quarter, trying to help his team get back in it. But the Chaos 9-1 run in the second half. What impressed you really about that run? Because we saw a lot of skirmishes there, a lot of scuffles happening in this game. Chaos were able to stay composed though and pull out this win.
If there's a team that I'm not surprised gotten a lot of skirmishes, it's the one with all the Canadian box players on it. They're used to it. They're
Josh Byrne tossing off gloves.
Josh Byrne's 6'4", 200 and something. He's definitely,
he was ready to go.
He's a handsome lad, but he's been in a couple of scraps before having to play Canadian summer, I'm sure. So, it is what it is. It's kind of cool to see some of the scrappiness, and that's going to overshadow the game and what Chaos did. But I'll just say this. A happy Andy Towers makes for a happy Lacrosse Flash. That guy's electric to watch, and he's just absolute gift gold. A 9-1 run speaks for itself. The Chaos boys were fantastic. Ian McKay was what an ad he's been. A lot of people really discounted that trade with Connor Fields, saying that Chaos got fleeced. Ian McKay's a player, and he's a two-way player, which is really important, and he can play both ends really efficiently. Pick up a pole, that offensive side's showing through. He can sting it from outside. He's just, you plug him in wherever you need, and he's a player, man. The entire ensemble has been fantastic. Dane Smith has been good. Josh Byrne, a little bit quieter than last year, but he's been fantastic. Jake Ficaro has been amazing. Again, just a 2-point killer. I think that the Chaos, what they need to do to be successful, though, is they need to get Jared Newman more involved, and they need to get Troy Ray more involved.
We've been saying that for a while.
You need to engage the bomb squad, because that's what made your team so special, was that quick strike ability and the ability to not let the defense set up. I think that's kind of
dangerous too. You got a guy like Jared Newman, huge 2-point threat coming down every few possessions, working him in more offensively. You call a slide, that just creates more offense.
You got a guy like Jared Newman coming down, a pull, even an Ian McKay coming down. That brings the defense up. They have to rotate to you. And then you leave one of these Canadians open, and if you leave them on the crease, that's like a 99.9% chance they're burying the ball. Like, those box hands, they're not missing from in close on a 6x6, let's be honest. So yeah, I think that they need to get back to that, because that's what made them so special, was just that quick strike ability. And yeah, it's what I said before, not letting the defense get settled. And I think the 2-man game only goes so far with them, especially without a guy like Curtis Dixon, who was so special for them last year in the bubble, where they're not as good when they're in set offense. And that's no disrespect to them. That's just, they play a different style than every other team in the league. And, more teams are more high paced than they are. They play more of a methodical 2-man game, pick and roll, stuff like that. So the Chaos were good. 9 straight goals against, or 9-1, I should say, against the Cannons. Fantastic. They scrapped it up a little bit, made it a gritty win, which is nice for all those Canadians. I'm sure they like getting back to those roots. But Canada's team, they're back, man. 2 wins now. We were kind of worried about them to start, but we're excited now. So yeah, congrats to the Cannons. Like I said, Andy Towers, an absolute electric factory. So hoping we get to see more Marcellis like that this weekend.
We got a big one for the Chaos against the Atlas on Saturday night. The second game there on Saturday night. So very excited for that game. We probably could have said I could have said any Chaos against any team, and it would be like, yeah, very exciting game coming up. All these games very exciting. But we saw Chase Fraser get his first PLL goal for the Chaos. Ryan Smith tallied a hat trick and assist. And then just to go back there to the Archers as well, because I skipped it over there before. But another Canadian, Trey Leclair, got his first PLL goal of his career. So great.
Those Canadian boys, they're standing up. By the way, just right there. Bobby Moe, stand up. Let's go.
There we go. Absolutely.
Good for Ryan.
Very
Smith.
excited. What'd you say?
Sorry. It's like good for Ryan Smith. These boys are fun. Good for Mac O'Keefe as well.
Yeah, Mac O'Keefe putting together still a great rookie season. And then another guy there for the Chaos that really, I guess would say, turn around his season, Max Adler. Won 17 of 26 faceoffs, good for 65% against Payne Smith, who the Cannons picked up during the week last week and then went ahead and started. We'll see. I'd imagine he stays on the roster. Payne Smith we're talking about. I'd imagine he stays on the roster, but we'll see if the Cannons plan on utilizing him. I would expect they do, being that they have the doubleheader, probably utilizing Smith and Drew Simoneau. But let's move on now to our final game of the weekend. It was the second game on Saturday as the Chrome played again against this red-hot Atlas team who is led by Brian Costavio. He tallied 6 points, 3 goals, a 2-point goal, and an assist, along with 2 caused turnovers and 2 ground balls. Just a absolutely loaded stat line there for Costavio. You were talking before about Tarafenko. I'll bring up Danny Logan. Had a 2-point goal and assist, 3 caused turnovers, and 3 ground balls. These rookie short stick defensive middies coming up huge for this Atlas team. Baptiste looks like he got back on track, 15 to 24, 63%, and an assist on the day for Trevor Baptiste. So the Atlas coming to this one after the Chrome get a big win over the Archers. They don't let the Chrome pick up any momentum. Atlas put them away, and pretty much a decisive win there for the Bulls.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll leave Chrome because I think we've pumped their tires a little bit too much. Not too much, but we pumped their tires enough for today. The Atlas are a wagon in the making, man. And we kind of wrote them off after that opening week loss to the Archers where they just got blown out in Boston. They've been fantastic, and they've only gotten better. You know, this little run they've been on started before they even got Jeff Teat in the lineup, which is even more impressive. And I think, you know, they're not exactly playing the role of underdog, but I think they sort of have that chip on their shoulder where it's like, hey, these guys were counting us out to start the year. Nobody had us except for the guys in the room. And I think they really played into that. I mean, John Crowley definitely played into it in the locker room after that win. They had a couple weeks back, but Jake Caraway's been unbelievable. He's been fantastic.
He only had a goal in this game, but he has been incredible this season.
Tuck Caraway has been fantastic. Jeff Teat's been Jeff Teat. I mean, nobody appears surprised, quite honestly. He's been doing this for his entire life at this point. I wasn't quite expecting 7 goals last weekend, but, you know, whatever. It is what it is. He's just going out and proving that he's just an absolute myth of a player. I can't believe that he's doing what he's doing out there, especially after a year off. Is just ridiculous. But it was the midfield this week. It was Brian Costabile. Costibile. I butchered that. Costibile. I think I pronounced that. We'll get it down.
We'll get it down eventually.
And Romar Dennis. They were both fantastic. And I think they were saying on the broadcast that the coaches are sort of just saying, put it on net and it'll go when it comes to Romar. And he's got one of the heaviest shots I've ever seen. And he's 6'5". He's a big body. He's like Miles Jones. He can run guys over if he gets downhill. So he's got to utilize that more. I don't want to say he's gun shy, but I think he's just had trouble finding his shot. And now he's starting to figure out, hey, I can just run past these guys and get my hands free. And if I put it, you know, anywhere remotely on cage, it's probably going to go because he's got one of the heaviest shots I've seen in the league. It's crazy. Brian Costabile was an absolute treat to watch last year. I'm not too surprised he's doing what he's doing. He's a two-way menace. And dear God, somebody needs to get him in an NLL jersey immediately because he is a treat of a player. He's going to be so good if he plays box. But yeah, everything's going right for this team. Michael Rexroad was leading the league in caused turnovers coming into the season, or into the week, excuse me. And then you have Tucker Durkin, you got Cade Van Raphorst. Trevor Baptiste is still doing his thing. Like, this team can't be slept on. And it's going to be tough because, you know, Jack and Cannon, we don't quite know what his injury is, so hopefully he's doing okay. But this team, as long as they get good goaltending, they have a chance in every single game they're in. So it's going to be really interesting to watch them for the rest of the year. You know, we talked. I was the one that keyed it. The retool, it's done,
Yeah.
man. They're here.
Oh, yeah.
They're ready to go.
The retool is done. They might still be fixing a few gears, obviously, as the season's going on, but the retool, I would say, is complete. Austin did coin that term back over the offseason. Bringing that back because really, as we're saying, Ben Rubier kind of accomplished what he wanted to accomplish, building this team around Brian Costavio, making sure, he – I think Dan was saying it. Dan Aresti was saying it coming into this season that he sees Costavio. I think he might have said it maybe once the season started. He sees Costavio as a top, now maybe just outside. I think it was that top 5 midfielders in the league. He's putting himself in that conversation right now. It's very exciting to watch Brian Costavio play the game of lacrosse. One thing I will say on the Chrome and Sean Scanoni, who did get the start there on Sunday, he gave up 3 2-point goals. So kind of the difference in that game we'll see going forward. I imagine should we see John Galloway. That was a question coming into the season. When will we see Sean Scanoni? But again, John Galloway has been playing some incredible lacrosse. So we can't imagine that he'll get pulled anytime soon. But week 4 is officially in the books, and sometime this week we should get an injury report. Hopefully some updates on guys like Jack Concan, who we know sustained injuries, Matt Rambo, who missed this past weekend. We hope the best for them and that we will see them soon. But we should also see another wave of transactions during the week. A handful of guys are available through the reserve claim process, through the player pool. We should have much more on that come Friday, so make sure to tune into Goal Line Extended. But looking ahead to week 5 from Minnesota, we have the Water Dogs and the Cannons in a week 1 rematch on Friday night. With the Redwoods and the Whipsnakes on Saturday, a matchup that has created over the past 2 summers some of the best and most memorable games in the league's short history. The Atlas and Chaos, as we were saying before, will follow that game on Saturday night with the Chrome and Water Dogs and the Cannons and Archers wrapping up the weekend on Sunday. Austin, what game are you most looking forward to as the PLO heads up north to Minnesota?
It's got to be Whips Redwoods. That game is always fireworks. Those 2 teams are always incredible. I think it's pretty easy to, we haven't quite voted on it as a group yet, but I think it's pretty easy to see what our game of the week is going to be. 2019 championship rematch. They went in the semifinals last year to overtime. Like, this game's going to be fantastic. It's going to be added intrigue because we don't know what Matt Rambo's status is. So that's the game to watch for me. But we've been talking about it this whole time. Each one of these games there's going to be fireworks in it. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be, another interesting weekend. And let's enjoy it because we're going to have a couple weeks off after this one's done.
Absolutely. We don't know the status of Matt Rambo. We don't know the status in terms of who we'll see in goal for the Redwoods. So something that we will debate, talk about more on Friday, and wait to see what happens on Saturday. And Austin, looking at the league standings, the War Dogs and Cannons are both at the bottom of it. Obviously, the War Dogs at 2-3 with a -11 goal differential, the worst in the league, up against the Cannons, who are 1-4. But as we're saying, probably the best 1-4 team we've ever seen with a -1 goal differential. So similar records, both at the bottom of the table, but as we can see and as we've watched all season, these are 2 very different teams for the Cannons. The record not really doing them too much justice as they've been unable to close and win these tight games, but an important weekend for both. They play each other on Friday night, and then they play again on Sunday, the War Dogs against the Chrome and the Cannons against the Archers, who will be looking for it's a big turnaround, obviously, the Archers after dropping those 2 games this past weekend. So an important weekend for both teams in their preparation and execution for their game on Friday and then each of their games on Sunday. What do both of these teams need to do to try to turn their seasons around, the Water Dogs and Cannons?
Ooh, that's tough. The Cannons need to just keep doing what they're doing, just find that way to win. I think that's the thing for both teams is they've been that close to wins. And maybe a little less so with the Water Dogs. They've had a couple tough losses, but they just need to keep doing what they're doing. I think both of them. The Cannons have been right there so many times this season. They've come up just short a couple times. The Water Dogs just need to find consistency. If they can find that defensive play to go along with how their offense has been firing lately, I think, Mikey Schlosser was on GLE a couple weeks ago. He's fantastic. I think Connor Kelly's been good. Kieran Mcardle's scoring. Ben Reeves. It's all when Michael Sowers gets back. Like I said before, this team will be very good offensively. I think it's just they need to start getting more consistency from the defense. And Dylan Ward's got to, he's probably going to have to come up with some double-digit save games to get them some more victories. The Cannons, I think, the dice just hasn't, the coin hasn't flipped their way, I should say. It's just, they've been there with the Whip Snakes. They've been there with countless other teams, the Redwoods in week 1. Like, something's got to go right for them at some point. I think it might be this week, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's the Water Dogs as well. I mean, both teams need a win, so it's going to be a good game. They'll both be really hungry.
They've all been for the Cannons. Besides this past weekend, obviously against Chaos, real close. Besides obviously Cannons, Water Dogs 2 there in week 1, but real close. Obviously with the Redwoods and Whip Snakes coming down to 1 goal. Whip Snakes, that was a 15-14 game. The Whip Snakes ended up winning that one last week. The Atlas beat the Cannons 18-17. Lyle Thompson held to a goal or to no goals, excuse me. So just very interesting. We'll see if the Cannons can overcome these losses the last couple of weeks. Try to get a win or 2 wins here this weekend against the War Dogs team where we don't know if we'll see. I think we can actually imagine that we'll see Dylan Ward, but we don't know for certain that we'll see him in goal, something that we will wait for. But the Cannons and Water Dogs face-off is set for Friday at 8 p.m. exclusively on Peacock. Make sure to tune in, as I said before, to Goal Line Extended on YouTube on Friday and at GL Extended on Instagram and Twitter, as we'll be looking ahead to all 5 of this weekend's games, including Friday night's game. But Austin, I want to thank you for joining me today as we reflect on Week 4 in the PLO and look ahead to Week 5 out in Minnesota. And that is going to do it for today's show of the PLL Flash. I want to thank you all for watching. If you're not already, make sure to subscribe to Lacrosse Flash on YouTube. Hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any future shows, and follow along on Instagram and Twitter at Lacrosse Flash. All of the links that you will need, including our website, lacrosseflash.com, will be in the description. But Week 4 in the PLL, not exactly what many of us expected, but an exciting weekend it was, and we're now on to Week 5 ahead of the All-Star break. I hope you all have an incredible week, and we will talk to you on Friday. Cheers. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We did just outro the show, but as we're pretty much wrapping up, we get a trade that comes at us here on Monday night as the Cannons have sent midfielder Chris Hogan and face-off specialist Drew Simoneau to the Whip Snakes for face-off specialist Kevin Reisman, which reunites Reisman and Sean Quirk, who won an MLL championship together in 2020 in the MLL bubble. But Chris Hogan traded to the Whip Snakes. News broke by Pro Football Talk there with NBC. Initial thoughts here on a trade that I don't think we were really expecting. I think we were expecting more so because Hogan had not dressed the last couple weeks that he would be available in that way to be picked up as a reserve player. But Quirk uses him instead of just letting him leave, finds a trade for him, sends him off to the Whip Snakes. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's better to get something for him than nothing. I'm just sort of interested in. We're just finding out about this. Like, Ryan's not kidding. I came back downstairs and we finished our recording, and we hit record. So this is instant reaction, and I don't know what the hell to think of this trade. Partly because Kevin Reisman, I don't know much about Kevin Reisman. I'm going to be honest. But he won an MLL championship with Quirk last year. He was his go-to guy. I get it. I just, Chris Hogan, say what you will about him, he played well in his one game that he was in there. Like, he didn't get beat. He didn't get scorched, I should say. He probably got beat once or twice, but his athleticism showed through. He had a penalty. That's probably the main thing you could say about him. Drew Simoneau, I think, is a guy that's, has a lot of potential. It's kind of what I don't understand is you traded a face-off guy for a face-off guy, but you also traded a midfielder as well. I don't know what to think of it at the moment. We'll have to see when the guys get on the field. Like, I don't know how Chris Hogan fits into the system with the Whips. Maybe he's just a body for them to have there. Maybe it was just an add-on, an extra guy that you could have. Who really knows the situation? We're never going to know. I'll be interested to see what happens because the Whips don't really need a short stick defensive midfielder. Charlie Hayes has been very good. Matt Abbott's been...
We were talking about Matt Abbott before.
About him.
He's been great.
I don't know how he fits in, but I'll be interested to see it. And the Whips just got Drew Simoneau in behind Joe Nardello, which is silly because Drew Simoneau, if you have a face-off violation and Joe Nardello can't take a draw, then you have one of those guys in Drew Simoneau that can just scrap it up and do a really good job in there. And, he's held his own this season, but I hope Reisman works out for the Cannons because Peyton Smith had a rough bubble last year. And I just hope it works out for both of these teams. I hope everybody has a good time. Let's put it that way. But
I hope everybody has fun. We hope everybody
I just hope both teams have
it.
fun is exactly right. That's my mentality and everything. But quick reaction is I don't know what this means for either team. I usually have a pretty good idea because we do flash reacts and I like to ramble about guys, but there's a lot of unknowns here and how guys are going to fit in. So it's a good trade for the Whips. I think Hogan brings them depth. Simoneau brings them depth. I don't know what Riesman brings to the Cannons other than familiarity with, and he was one of the top faceoff guys available out of the MLL during the merger. So I'm not going to give him, the short end of the stick there. He's a good faceoff guy. I just haven't seen him play before, so I'm not going to make some bold prediction. But you would assume that, Riesman's the guy, or they're going to play him in a tandem 1A, 1B with Peyton Smith, and that'll be how they go about it. So we'll see how that works for the Cannons. But the Whips just got deeper, which is, every other team in the league is not very happy about, I'm sure, right at this moment.
You went down the Redwoods route. I'll go down the Cannons route here because we've seen kind of a rotating carousel here for the Cannons at the faceoff X. Obviously, had Simoneau and Tommy Kelly. Tommy Kelly ended up not working out. Brendan Fowler's also somewhere on the roster. He's currently on the injured reserve. But they tried Drew Simoneau and Tommy Kelly, booted Tommy Kelly to the curb, brought in Peyton Smith. Peyton Smith started this weekend, was the only player. The only face-off specialist, I should say, that was dressed for that game against the Chaos. He struggled against Max Adler, who we've been talking about, has struggled so far through the first couple games. But making this trade, as you said, Quirk reuniting with Riesman, who was his face-off specialist last year in the MLL bubble, which the Cannons won the MLL championship last season. So that's really the only thing I can see out of it from the Cannons. That it's just you're continuing this carousel of bringing in new face-off guys, hoping that one of them work. Let's see if Riesman can. He was dressed for the Whip Snakes last weekend. He didn't play on Friday night against the Atlas, but he did play against Chrome in that loss. He got a couple face-offs in there, especially Nardella last weekend. Struggled a little bit, but Riesman got in there. I think he took a handful of face-offs. I don't think he was positive, as we could probably expect against a guy like Connor Farrow, another one of the best face-off guys in the game. But we'll see. Going to be interesting. I think for the Cannons, it's that we're going to see Smith and Riesman used, especially here with this doubleheader. I think we'll see both of them, at least in that Sunday game against the Archers. I think we'll see both of them used.
That'll be a good measuring stick game because Bones Kelly, he's a good face-off guy, but he's obviously not one of the guys you talk about in that upper tier, like the Farrells, the Nardellas, the Baptiste, the Erlands now. He's sort of that second tier, so he'll be a good test, and he's not going to be an easy test. Let's say that. He's going to battle, and
Jake Withers on Friday night will be the test.
That is the single guy that will beat the living shit out of you. And pardon my French, but Jake Withers does not give you a single easy draw. He turns it into a fight 20 times.
TD Erland, as we talked before, 24 of 32, but obviously, TD, it was kind of like a one. They were saying on the broadcast, it was a 1-on-3, pretty much every face-off. TD Erland, though, was able to do his thing, get out clean most of the time. Withers was able to kind of scrap it up a few times, which is what they wanted to do, the Water Dogs. That's how they face off. Obviously, Courier and Ryland Reese there on the wings. But TD Erland was able to do good. We'll see this weekend how Riesman and Payne Smith do.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking about the next move because you're talking about this carousel, and if Riesman doesn't work out, you've traded away Drew Simoneau, who's another guy that Quirk took in the expansion draft. Charlie Leonard's out there. Maybe you go after him as a guy from the Redwoods. Maybe you trade for a Kyle Gallagher off the Chaos. I don't really know where you go. You're not getting one of those top guys, so maybe you get an unproven commodity is not fair to those two, but rookies that have sort of been biding their time behind more established guys would be the better way to put it.
Yeah. We will see how this move shakes out around the league. We'll see how it affects us this weekend. We'll talk much more about it on Friday, as well as any other moves that slip through the cracks here between now recording this and when we upload and post this show. I'd imagine we get some transaction news on Tuesday, but we will see. But for everybody still watching, I should say, because we did roll through an outro. Thank you for watching. Like I said, make sure to tune into Goal Line Extended on Friday. We will be back talking about this weekend's games and looking ahead to an exciting Week 5. Like I said, 5 exciting matchups: Water Dogs, Cannons. We got the Redwoods Whip Snakes and a 2019 championship rematch, 2020 semifinal rematch, Atlas Chaos, Chrome Water Dogs, and Cannons Archers there rounding out the weekend. Very excited. We'll be back Friday to talk more about it. I hope everyone has a great week for the second time, and we'll talk to you on Friday. Cheers.